Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel here. Thank you very much for tuning in, I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed and liked and all that, it would make a big difference. We're getting close to the 1,000 subscriber threshold, so that's pretty cool, pretty interesting, pretty fun. But yeah, that's kind of all I had today in terms of the boring admin type stuff. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about how do I maintain the pH and the KH and the GH high in my African cichlid aquariums. So the basic thing with African cichlid aquariums, so we're talking about Lake Tanganyika, Lake Malawi, and Lake Victoria for the most part, is they're going to want a high pH, so like in the 8 plus kind of range, high GH and high KH. So those three things are the most important things that you want to keep high when you're looking after your aquarium. A lot of places will recommend using things like the Cichlids Malawi buffer or making your own cichlid salts and that. And so this option is definitely going to work. And I know some very sort of legit breeders who use it, who make their own reverse osmosis water and then add back the cichlid salts. That's fine. For general hobbyists, I wouldn't say that's the best option. I'd say what we're going to be talking about today is going to be the best, easiest option that's going to set you up for the most long-term success. So yeah, let's get into the meat of today's video, shall we? So this is one of my aquariums, my Lake Tanganyika aquariums. Last time I measured the pH, it was about, I think it was like 8.4 or something like that. It was like real high, pretty much as high as the API test kit goes. And we maintain it at 8.4. So what do I do for maintenance? Well, what I do is we drain down the water to like there roughly, like maybe 40% of the water down, and then I fill it up just straight from the tap. That is all I do. And the secret to me being able to do this is this here. So this stuff here is the crushed limestone, which is basically like limestone sand. But you can also get the crushed aragonite, or in the US, I think they call it crushed coral. This is the exact same thing, and what this does is it kind of dissolves, and as it dissolves, it keeps the pH and the KH and the GH high, and brings it up to that level. So when the water comes out the tap and I put it in this tank, it'll be like a bit over 7, like 7 to 7.2 kind of range. And then that's all I need to do. Everything else is just handled by the aragonite or the limestone or whatever is in the aquarium. There are some other options. What you can do is, I think it's Seachem does one called Seachem Grey Coast, which is marketed towards the more marine side of the hobby, but it works well for the African cichlids, and that's basically the same thing, except it's dark. I'm not 100% familiar with it, to be honest, but I believe it looks like this, basically. So I believe it is the same appearance as this, except it has that functional benefit. But yeah, this is going to be the easiest way to maintain the higher pH and the KH. Another thing people do is you can do the like the actual like limestone chips. Like you get the decorative limestone chips for people use them for like their gardens and stuff. And what you can do is put that in your filter or in the back of the tank, somewhere where the water is going to flow through it. And what that's going to do is that's going to function the same way, but it's obviously going to have a different appearance. This same sort of process can also be achieved by using crushed oyster shell. So crushed oyster shell is a good option. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they use it for birds, for something with birds, like to do with their beaks or something. I don't know really, but you can get big volumes of crushed oyster shell for real cheap. Or what you can do is you can go around like, seafood restaurant or something and ask for their own old oyster shells and do it yourself, just smash them up with a hammer or something. And put that in a spot where it's going to get water flowing through it, or the opportunity to dissolve essentially. And then what things are going to do is they are going to dissolve and maintain that water pH and KH and everything where you're going to want it to be. So I guess the main question then is, why do I prefer this method to, for example, the method we touched on before, where the cichlid salts or lake salts or the buffers and the powder buffers and that get added to the water. So why do I prefer this method rather than that method? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about next. So the problem I have with the whole cichlid salt thing is, I guess, multiple levels. So setting your tank up with the aragonite or whatever that we've mentioned before is going to be more expensive than the silica sand, but in the long run, it is going to be so much cheaper. These cichlid salts and that, they're actually not cheap, and you do need to kind of keep using them, so it needs to be like a constant use thing if you don't have the option to kind of let up. And I think the reason why these are pushed by a lot of shops, like I'm not talking about any particular shop, just like in general in the industry, is because if people are using them, they are going to have to keep coming back. It's similar to a frozen food. So within the industry, frozen food is known as a loss leader, and the thing with them is they will keep people coming back to kind of top up. And then what they do is, as they keep coming back, we're all fish people. We know when you go to the fish store, there's always something that catches your eye. Maybe there's a new plant they got. Maybe you want to try different food or something. It's just kind of a tool to get people in the door. And then once they're in the door, yes, they'll buy their cichlid salts, they'll buy their frozen food, whatever. But they'll buy other stuff too. They might buy, whatever catches their eye. And so that's, I think, part of the reason why they are pushed, as well as having, a good margin on them themselves as a product. So that's why I think they are used a lot. But what that does do is it means that as a hobbyist, keeping African cichlids becomes expensive. And not expensive in like the fun way. Like, as many memes as you want are around about how keeping fish is expensive because it's an addicting hobby. And that's fantastic because it's bringing people excitement and joy and continued sort of enjoyment. But with this sort of stable expense of just essentially water becoming an expense, is it's not fun, and it just kind of sucks the money out of you. Money that you could be using, I want to rescape it and redo the rocks or whatever. So that's, I think, why it is pushed so hard. But the sand, you buy it once, you pretty much never have to buy it again. Like, maybe in 10 years you might need some more, but that 10 years is a long time, So that's kind of, I guess, the main reason why I think it is much better option. And if people in the industry are listening, I wouldn't be scared that it's going to like take away from our top line revenue, because people having more fun and saving their money gives them more money to spend on other cool stuff like rocks and plants and different foods and like whatever. There's always an option, essentially. For a fish person is never going to run out of things to spend their money on, is basically the rule of fish keeping, essentially. So yeah. But the good thing is, or the main question I get around this sort of method is, how does water changes affect this sort of process? Like, how does that interact? Is that not bad for the fish? So basically with this aquarium, like I just done an water change, like, I just finished basically before I started filming. So I probably shouldn't have done that because that's why there's crud floating all around. But, I'm not a smart man. But I take it down like 80% of the way, like down to, there, and then fill it up. These are big fish. They need a lot of water changes. It's like a proper display aquarium, so I need it to keep looking really nice. All this kind of stuff. So basically, I don't have trouble because even though the pH goes down, obviously, when you're adding a whole bunch of water at a neutral pH, it's not enough to really cause any trouble. Because if you're keeping happy and healthy fish, they're going to be fine. Like, they'll be completely fine with that change. They're not going to go into shock or anything. Because the thing is, water's getting added gradually. It's not like the snap of a finger and then the pH is different. Like, it's getting diluted and diluted and diluted. So it's like basically the same as an acclimation. And then it'll acclimate and then the water will go back up. The pH will go back up, rather. And so they're more than happy to deal with that as long as they're healthy. I wouldn't do it like, if your fish are on death's door, well, if your fish are on death's door, you got bigger problems. But that's more than enough to keep them happy. You know, filling them up from the tap is enough to keep them, you know, they'll be happy as, and it will save you money. The fish aren't going to mind. Dealing with this, you know, these cichlid salts and buffers and that is quite a sort of fiddly process, I guess. And so there's no way to really be exactly right on when it comes to these products. So what you'll want to do is make sure that you're measuring exactly the same amount if you are using it. But the problem is, like, within reason, we're not dealing with huge tanks. So even doing that, you're not going to be able to measure exactly the same amount. You're going to have slight fluctuations in that. And those slight fluctuations could be enough to cause added stress, if that makes sense. Because this is kind of an ongoing thing. It's not like something that's going to just set and forget. It's something that's going to, like, just be there until you next do a water change. So that does become a little bit problematic in the long run. And then, yeah, it is, you know, you're going to have to, I don't know exactly how you're supposed to use it, but like you fill up the tank and then you put them in. That's the pH going down and then up and then down again. Oh no, other way around. Down, up, down. I don't know. You know, it changes like 3 times really fast. And that is a much more instant thing. It's not like the aragonite where it's slowly bringing the pH up. You chuck the buffer in, the pH shoots up. So like you're having a lot more fluctuation and you're having it a lot quicker than you would by using these natural aragonite or crushed coral or whatever substrates. You can get different types as well. Like I said, we can get the Grey Coast, which is like a black option. You can get this real fine stuff here, what like we've got in this tank, or you can get it all the way up to like almost like a gravel, more than a sand you can get. So there's options to kind of adjust to whatever different aquarium you have. Otherwise, like I said, you can put limestone or crushed oyster shell in the filter. You can also use the natural coral rock, although the problem with that is, so that's not coming into New Zealand anymore. So you'd have to find some somewhere second hand. Otherwise, you can use the, what do they call them? Artificial like marker rocks. Which is like the fake stuff that they use in reef tanks, but you can use that in a cichlid tank as well, and that's going to have the same effect of dealing with the pH and the KH and the GH and all that important stuff. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on the whole thing, and I hope this idea or plan or whatever gives you a better sort of easier way to be able to maintain your pH and KH and GH and everything, but still save you a bit of money and set you up for a greater amount of success, or having a greater chance of success, if you will. So yeah, I really look forward to hearing how you guys go with all this. I'd really like to know. Please let me know down below in the comments what your method of keeping the pH up and that is. But yeah, other than that, thank you all very much for watching. I love you all so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.